John, as you know, it was the Oscars last night, and Wisconsin went Hollywood. Check out this from some of the post-game press conference from Wally Pfister, who had just accepted an Oscar for Best Cinematography for Inception. Take a look at this.
I think that what's going on in Wisconsin is kind of madness right now, and I've been a union member for 30 years, and what the union has given to me is security for my family. They've given me health care in a country that otherwise does not provide health care, and I think the unions are a very important part of the middle class of America. So I stand strong behind any of the union members in this country and in any other country, because all we're trying to do is get a decent wage and have medical care.
A big shout out for Wisconsin there. We're joined now by one of the leading experts on Washington and all the ways that things work here. Norm Ornstein of the American Enterprise Institute is our guest. And Mr. Ornstein, I want to start with the looming budget showdown. Do you see now the framework for something even beyond the next couple of weeks, that we could be looking at a long-term solution? Are they going to be back here in 2 weeks' time if they get the CR talking about the same issues?
They're going to be back here in 2 weeks talking about the same issues. You know, you could tell from the last conversation that you had that freshmen are not going to be content with a couple of $1 billion every couple of weeks. And one of the problems they're going to have, even if it gets to that point, is that you're going to start talking about real programs. And keep in mind, you know, John said that $4 billion is the tiniest teardrop in the ocean in terms of government spending and debt. But our focus right now is on the $480 billion out of the $3.8 trillion budget that's non-security discretionary domestic spending, and on half of the year, because we're now in the current fiscal year that started October 1. So that's $240 billion, and you've got $60 billion in cuts proposed. This is 25% cuts if you did it across the board, and what most people see as government operating, which would be pretty severe for the next year, but it's trivial when it comes to the larger problem. When you start to get to that larger problem, which has to be not just the entitlement programs, but defense and revenues, you're going to see a breakdown. Before that, I just don't see the freshmen going along with what I suspect would be much less than $30 billion, maybe $20 billion, which is 20 cents on the dollar for what they promised they would do, $100 billion in the first year, without having at least one shutdown to show their chops that they really tried and didn't just cave right away.
Okay, so the president completely punted on all the big issues in terms of his budget, entitlements, defense, taxes, all of that stuff you mentioned. Now we know Paul Ryan is preparing the Republican budget, and we heard from John Boehner last night saying it is going to have specifics on entitlement reform. I'm told that's going to be Medicare cuts, like what Ryan himself has done in the past, only acting for himself. Are the Republicans jumping off a cliff here? Are they going to survive this politically?
This is going to be very tough for them. You know, Paul Ryan has had his own budget plan where he tried to solve this problem with spending cuts alone. And by the way, with pretty dramatic changes that he made in his own budget in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, it still doesn't balance the budget until 2060 and adds $62 trillion to the debt in the meantime. But he only got 16 co-sponsors for that plan. Now, if he puts some of those same ideas, which basically move Medicare towards a kind of voucher program down the road, no more Medicare program as we know it, I suspect that that's going to leave Republicans vulnerable. And Democrats are going to demagogue it. Both parties have been guilty of demagoguing, whether it's taxes on the Republican side or the health care plan and death panels. Now it'll be Democrats saying that they want to take Medicare away from seniors.
Norm, in our last 30 seconds here, is there any incentive for Democrats to come to the table on this, or are they happy to see Republicans twist in the wind on entitlements?
I think there's an incentive, and the incentive is that we're heading into a very deep hole unless we reach some larger agreement on the deficit issues. I wish the president in his State of the Union message had at least said, let's take the framework from the Deficit Commission that I helped to create, put it into legislative language and bargain from there. Democrats are going to have to do something on these issues and not just stay out of the game.
All right, Norm Ornstein from the American Enterprise Institute, thanks for being here on Top Line. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Rick.
All right, that does it for this edition of Top Line. For John Carl, I'm Rick Klein. And John, what's with all the food on Capitol Hill? I notice every time you're up there, you're eating something. What's going on with that?
Hey, look, this is a big day, man. If you don't think styrofoam's a big story, you just don't get it, Rick.
All right, stay on it. Twitter.com/Rick Klein, Twitter.com/John Carl.